Hi, this is Greg Kihlstrom. Welcome to the Agile World podcast, where we discuss customer experience, employee experience, and transformation in an agile age. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to TEKsystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at theagile.world and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, a blueprint for creating an experience-led organization, now available on Amazon and other retailers. My name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile World podcast. I'm excited to introduce part 2 of a special 3-part series about content and CX, brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. Burk and Steve joined us on the Agile World last week, where we talked about the important role content strategy plays in delivering optimal customer experiences. If you missed it, be sure to go back and check it out. Today, we're going to talk about technology and its role in enabling a great content strategy in today's enterprise, as well as some of the challenges that organizations face as they implement wide-reaching content strategies. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome back to the show Burk Buechler and Steve Householder from TEKsystems Digital Experience team. First, why don't you both tell me what you do at TEKsystems?
Hey, Greg, happy to be here again this week. My name is Burk Buechler. I lead all of digital delivery and practice for TEKsystems Global Services.
Thanks for the invite back, Greg. Appreciate it. Glad to be here. Again, Steve Householder, and I look after our digital and creative division at TEKsystems. And super happy to be here talking to you.
Great. Well, it's great to have you both back on the show. Let's start by talking about how companies can do content strategies well and some of the things that organizations need to overcome in order to be successful. So what are the top challenges that organizations face when they, in regards to content strategy?
Yeah, great question, Greg. So, counterintuitively, most organizations, what we find that we interact with, suffer from too much content. Much of their content is either obsolete or ineffective. When you have that situation, too much content makes it harder to find relevant information and harder to really connect with the customers in a way that's advantageous. We talked about on the first episode. For a lot of organizations, just the content ecosystem could be made up of multiple tools or platforms. For larger organizations, that could be even higher in terms of the number of tools you're working with. So a critical first step to overcome some of those challenges of too much content is really doing a good inventory and audit of your complete kind of content ecosystem and presence, including current state architecture to inform decision making, better evaluation analysis of your investments, and recommendations of how they could be streamlined to reduce cost and increase efficiency. So we see we help a lot of customers out with these types of initiatives, and it's certainly helpful for, again, addressing those challenges that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think that's great, Burk, and really well said. When I think about the biggest challenge that keeps organizations from reaching their potential as it relates to content, I really think it boils down to company culture, to be honest with you. And I think that improvements have been made recently over the years. But those silos, the bureaucracy, just the amount of content that is out there, those challenges are still very, very real. The best companies I've interacted with believe that content marketing is a commitment, not a campaign. Yeah. And if you think about it being committed to informing and educating and interacting and engaging and building relationships with customers, that's a commitment. Yeah. And if you're listening to this podcast, it doesn't matter whether you are a blogger or a writer or a content specialist or you're the creative director or the CMO. If you can answer yourself that one question, is the culture in your organization rich to tell your story through content marketing, and is it alive? And if it's alive, it's thriving. And if it's not, you got some work to do.
How does TEKsystems work with companies where maybe the culture, maybe it's a good culture, but it needs a little work or, being developed or something like that, or even the articulating the culture needs to be developed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, in global services in particular, we bring a really holistic approach to solving those kind of needs. As I mentioned, we'll attack it first of all from a technology and business perspective. So, always aligning on what are the business objectives that need to be achieved, making sure we bring the right technology and process to that. But in particular, with the area that you asked, oftentimes we find the cultures and training and organizational understanding need to be better aligned as well. And so we've got a terrific capability around organizational change management to make sure that whatever solutions we bring to customers, that we nurture their adoption and we encourage their exploitation throughout the enterprise.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And about 18 months ago, TEKsystems made an acquisition of One North Interactive. And what that acquisition has given us is just some really powerful access to smart storytellers. And the ability to interact and engage with an organization on building a strategy to express who they want to, what they want to, and at what time they want to do it. So, having the ability to come in and really understand what's happening now and then strategically build that roadmap and put in place, whether it's a cultural change that needs to happen or whether it's a technology change or an audit or whatever it is, they can help build that roadmap to get where you want to be with the results that you're looking for. So for sure we can engage in multiple ways.
And I think what you touched on a little bit just there was, how do you achieve personalization at scale? How do you automate? How do you provide, the companies that you're working with, large enterprises that have a lot of different customers across countries, across, different personas. So how do organizations achieve this personalization at scale?
Yeah, great question. So it really does start, as Steve was indicating, with a top-notch strategy, right? Making sure that you're meeting the customer where they are in their journey for whatever they're trying to achieve in the content or personalization space, and laying out the right strategy to get to the business objectives they want to achieve. However, when we talk about personalization at scale, artificial intelligence and some machine language-driven personalization can go a long way towards achieving that personalization at scale with a minimal investment of human resources. We're seeing more and more customers in this functionality becoming more prevalent in organizations that we work with. When you take a look at platforms like Adobe Sensei or some of the other ones out there, you can really get some good personalization at scale because they also tie directly into the data piece, which serves who you need to connect to and what you need to learn to make the best decisions.
Okay. Do you see the data helping to justify the investment as well? So in other words, I would imagine it's tough to do personalization in a big way, the first time, but, talking about some of those data tools that you mentioned, does that kind of help justify internally so that they can make bigger investments and more scale?
It does. And our approach is to always get customers to tangible results very quickly. So if you look at kind of a crawl, walk, run approach for anybody that's not considering things like artificial intelligence, we can help them get there very quickly. And really prove the value along the way.
Yeah, that's great. Well, yeah, let's talk about technology and its role in an enterprise's content strategy. So what types of technologies are organizations using to enable, you touched on artificial intelligence, some machine learning, all of that. What are some other technologies they're using and how can organizations leverage and optimize their technologies to enhance the impact of content as well?
Yeah, good question, Greg. So at TEKsystems Global Services, we work with a lot of medium to large size organizations around the world. In particular, as it relates to areas like content strategy, like personalization, marketing technology in particular, we see a lot of our customers using enterprise-class digital experience platforms, like, for instance, an Adobe Experience Manager or Sitecore, are two of the biggest ones that we work with. And they use those to make the process more automated, served up with analytics, so that ideally what you want to do and are able to do with these types of systems is plan, produce, and publish and measure your results all in one place as it relates to your initiatives around content, around marketing, around personalization, whatever it may be. How it can fit into campaigns and automate campaigns that you may have within your organization. And so, some of the key components of those technology platforms that I mentioned are, a fairly centralized way to manage your digital audience, both anonymously as well as identifiably, having that single customer view, systems for automating authoring, publishing, optimization, analytics, tag management, right? All the areas that we see being necessary to have an effective content strategy and marketing strategy in place. So those are absolutely the technologies and kind of platforms that we find our customers work with, and we obviously have a lot of expertise in helping them get the most value out of those platforms for them.
Do you have any advice for those organizations that maybe aren't quite as far along and they're trying to evolve their content strategies? Where should they start thinking? And, what advice would you have for them?
I'll always start with, always honing in on really getting a good identification of your audience and your business goals, right? Those are the two kind of key areas to start with. But it does go without saying that, partnering with a service provider or an agency like the one that Steve indicated that we acquired not too long ago is a great way to boost, your content strategy initiatives. You can't improve what you don't measure. So it's critical to decide, what those business objectives are, what your business KPIs are, and then measure them so that you can plot the trends and react accordingly.
Yeah, I would agree. So I think of four things when I think about this, and really the first one is just really the extreme use of that behavioral data that you have access to that Burk was talking about. Search for the value and identify it, and then construct it and drive the insights out of it that can help lead you to where you need to go. Listen more. Number two, extreme listening, and then certainly responding quickly and effectively, to what you hear would be number two. Number three is this idea of building a cross-functional team inside your organization that can cut across multiple silos inside the organization, whether it's media, analytics, operations, to deliver on the results of personalization at scale. And then the fourth thing is just like Burk was saying, the right technology, and not only the right technology, use all the features and the benefits of the technology.
Yeah.
Right? You'd be amazed at how many people, maybe the audience wouldn't, because you probably have technologies in play that you're using 50% of. So, utilizing all of the features and the way it was intended to be used. You got Ferrari in the garage is the example that we already say, drive it.
Right.
Drive it like it's meant to be driven.
Yeah. It sounds like that's great advice for any whether they're starting out or even the more advanced ones that are, maybe halfway along.
Yeah.
It's really, to your point, it's so much of the features of these platforms are barely being touched upon. Is there anything else that you would tell maybe the more advanced company that is doing, they have the Adobe or the Sitecore, they're using, a considerable amount of it, but how do they take things further?
Yeah, and I think that's what we run into a lot, Greg. Just like the issue you're describing, companies have oftentimes bought these platforms. They may have worked either internally or with a different partner to get it implemented, but they're not using anywhere near its potential in terms of tools. And so, what we really focus on is helping customers with that value realization. So making sure that we're helping them, educating them, and guiding them on using all of the features and functionality of these terrific digital experience platforms that we're talking about, but doing it in a cost-effective way, but also a way that gets to tangible results quickly and directly addresses their business objectives.
Yeah. So as we talked about in the last episode, most organizations are placing an increased emphasis on customer experience, primarily because of its ability to differentiate and dominate in the marketplace. Let's talk a little bit about content and its role in that customer experience. How can organizations ensure consistency in customer experience during every customer interaction using technology?
Yeah, so I'll give one tip that we found working very well with some of the organizations that we worked with is just a simple around alignment of kind of tools and style guides. So one of the things when we think about consistency of customer experience, and particularly around content, is have an agreed upon style guide that every team member involved in the design and execution of the content and customer experience is aligned to and working from. It's kind of working from the same playbook. We help organizations create those playbooks that then the entire organization can work from to ensure that consistency. It's a simple one, but it's really important that not a lot of organizations do at scale, but certainly with getting the consistency, it's just key that you're enabling every content stakeholder with those tools, those style guides that's necessary for ensuring that consistency.
What are some of the components of that playbook?
Oh, it can be areas, such as defining the content types, the branding, the style, the agreed upon messaging, all those areas that one would think about in terms of consistent content.
That's great. Well, Burk and Steve, thanks so much for joining the show again. For those listening, what's the best way to keep up with what you and the TEKsystems Digital Experience team are doing?
Yeah, so just as before, I would recommend going to the TEKsystems.com website and looking at version next now. It's a campaign that we're running which has all of this relevant content as well as other blogs and content sources that can help answer the questions you have in this space.
Wonderful. If you'd like to hear more from Burk and Steve, tune in next week to part 3 of this podcast series about content and CX. Again, I'd like to thank Burk Buechler and Steve Householder from TEKsystems Digital for joining the show. You can learn more about content strategy and TEKsystems at TEKsystems.com. Thanks for listening to The Agile World with Greg Kihlstrom. See you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile World podcast, brought to you by TEKsystems. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. You can learn more and get a copy of my latest book, The Center of Experience, from my website at theagile.world or on Amazon or other retailers. Until next week, stay agile.